In this world, one man makes a startling discovery. What is that thing? No, seriously, what is it? I've never seen the show.
There are some shows in my viewing repertoire that I sometimes find hard to recommend. Time and age does that to shows sometimes. Like when you watched a show way back in the day, perhaps it was quite brilliant, but then 20 years could have passed, and in that 20 years, you have all these other newer shows that come out, and then trying to show that original show to someone is hard because they might prefer to watch something that is new. So how do you go about showing those old shows to people? Well, firstly, you have to hope that the reasons why you used to like the show are not tied solely to nostalgia. Like, there might be people out there who, like me, watched Montcallie Nights as a kid, but that does not mean that it is necessarily a good idea to show that to anybody now, because, well, to be fair, even back then it was only so-so. Not that I could show it to anybody, anyways, because it's not like it's been released on DVD or anything. So find a show that's not just good for nostalgia. Okay, check. Next, you needed to have a good story, and you probably needed to have good and interesting characters too, which is going to be a little harder to find because what's considered interesting now may not have been considered interesting back then. Also, it would be best if your show did something that not many shows have done since. For example, pulling a Gainax ending before Gainax made it popular. Finally, it might help, it just might help, if you give it some really unique and kick-ass music to help it along. I will admit, it is rare to find such a show, though I have been lucky enough in my time as an anime watcher to find quite a few of them. So, let's have a look at another one, shall we? Ladies, gentlemen, and others, my name is Arcada, and welcome to Glass Reflection. Today, the 1997 adaptation from OLM, Berserk. If you've never seen this series before, and it is a little old, being released in 1997, so if you haven't, don't worry. But allow me to give you a little bit of a personal recommendation. Skip the first episode. Just skip it. Don't watch it. Maybe come back to it, but honestly, it's not really necessary to enjoy the rest of the series. Why am I telling you this? Well, some shows like Berserk and Gungrave is another good example, start off in the future. The entire first episode takes place well beyond what actually happens in the series, focusing on plot developments from the manga arcs. It's good as a way to show a bit of contrast between the rest of the series, but most of what happens is unexplainable and there's no real context for anything that is happening. It's just a big bulky guy with an oversized weapon killing some hellspawn. Like, it's cool, but big whoop. Now, the real meat of the series starts in episode 2. The bulky hunter guy from before, a mercenary named Guts, is shown as he was many years prior. Through a series of happenstance events where he shows off how badass he really is, he catches the eye of a wildly methodical leader of a mercenary group, a group by the name Band of the Hawk, the leader of which being the feminine-looking swordsman by the name of Griffith. Through skill and tactics, Griffith both forces and convinces Guts to use his considerable skill to help his cause, said cause being to stop the war that has lasted for the last 100-ish years. The battles and trials that they face take up the entirety of the series, and 25 episodes later, when this show finishes without any filler, the ending happens. And that is the end of the Berserk Prologue. Wait, what? Prologue? Yes, Prologue. The Berserk anime is based off a manga that was written by Kentaro Miura, with its first chapters being released in 1989. And the manga, at least at the time of this video, is still ongoing. Berserk is long, but Berserk is good. Yes, this anime might only be a fraction of what the manga actually is, but as something to, like, sell and promote the manga, this does it brilliantly. See, like, to me, animes that pull the whole read the manga ending are generally quite horrible. They range from ending in the middle of nowhere to ending just before an interesting part, which of course forces you to go and read the manga. Technically, some would say that Berserk falls into the latter territory, as anyone who has actually seen the show's ending will protest. Because, you know, as I mentioned earlier, the ending is a Gainax ending before Gainax made doing that popular. But at the same time, the story that it tells is actually complete. Yes, it doesn't end well for the characters, not by a long shot, but over the course of the series, you get to see how they grow, see how they change. On its own, the show can be considered its own story, just not one with a happily ever after. Now, why would I, the guy that says that anime endings are paramount, tell you to go and watch an anime with a shitty ending? Because the characters are worth it. Oh, so worth it. Guts starts the series in a kind of apathetic rage. He fights because he enjoys it. Sure, the money is a nice bonus, but he just likes fighting. No glory or honor involved. Griffith, on the other hand, is all about the honor. He has aspirations to be a king and does whatever he can to reach those goals, rallying so many good warriors to his cause, Guts being one of them, but also Casca, who, quite frankly, is a complete, utter badass, and don't let anybody tell you different. Especially those who have read the manga. Like, if they come up to you and say, well, actually, Casca, just go, la 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 la. Seriously, though, even the unlikable characters are great, because of how great they are at being unlikable. Corcus, for example, spends a good chunk of the series being a right asshat. But in the end, you're like, yeah, he may be an asshat, but he's our asshat. That's kind of how the show makes you feel. It shows us what is ostensibly the prologue to a larger story that is Berserk, but while you're watching it, it doesn't feel like it's just a prologue. Throughout the series, we go from battle to battle, showing us this world, these characters, and what they're willing to do for one another, and then everything changes, which is just amazing. Now, to me, the animation itself is not interesting because of how good or bad it is, but rather because of who made it. The animation was produced by OLM, Oriental Light and Magic, not to be confused with Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's visual effects studio. Now, you might be watching Berserk and note that it is not, shall we say, kid-friendly. There's some really brutal imagery here. There's nudity and even rape down the line, which, by the way, if that bothers you, well, it's there, so be forewarned. But all of this was done by OLM, and you know what anime OLM is internationally famous for? Pokemon. Pokemon. All 900-ish episodes of Pokemon. Currently, they're also actually doing that Yokai Watch show that's pretty popular in Japan right now, but like, seriously, what a contrast, eh? In fact, with very few exceptions, I think that Berserk is probably the most mature anime that OLM has ever produced. And that's a shame, because Berserk was brilliant. I, of course, would be remiss if I did not mention two things that, if I didn't mention, I would slaughter myself for. Firstly, the music, because Susumu Hirasawa is a genius. Seriously, there are very few shows that I will say this for, but there is not a bad song on this soundtrack. In fact, there are several outstanding ones. Guts' theme is a very strong example, but of course also Forces, which some might remember topped the list of my favorite, or rather, what I consider to be the best anime background music ever. And it did it twice! Like, Hirasawa doesn't do much anime work. In fact, besides Berserk, Paranoia Agent, and Millennium Actress, he hasn't done anything else. Which, you know, is fine, of course. It's his music, and he can decide whether or not he wants to do more anime music or not. But it's kind of a shame that it's not easier for an anime watcher to listen to more of his music. You have to go out of your way to do it, which I totally recommend doing, because his solo work is also equally amazing. Like, I just wish that he did more anime music as well. Second thing, sound-wise, was the dub. Berserk is one of those dubs that's really good and is personally remarkable for me because of how many people in it I don't recognize. Most of this cast has done very little anime work outside of this series, and normally that's a red flag for me. Like, sure, Guts went on to play Akihito Kayaba in Sword Art, and Casca was Satsuki from Kill la Kill. But other than that, not much. Also, the bloopers.
Come here, Mini-Me. Can I have a hug? I love you. You complete me.
Oh my god, do you know how awesome these things are? Like, this series and these bloopers made me question, why doesn't every DVD release do this? They are so entertaining to watch, and it seriously depresses me that there are not more things like this from dub recordings in almost every anime we get. It's not like a lot of them didn't exist or anything, which could potentially be the case for a lot of anime. But if you watch enough convention Q&A panels by Crispin Freeman and Steve Bloom, you might know that there are some really steamy bloopers that they've done together in shows that have just never seen the light of day. I just want more, man! I want more, these bloopers were awesome. It's depressing.
Why would you do that with him?
'Cause I'm just a girl who can't say no. Can't seem to say it at all. I always say, come on, let's go. Just when I order, say stop. When a feller wants to kiss a girl, I know she ought to give his face a slap. When a fella starts a-kissing me, I kinda sorta wanna kiss him back.
So it shouldn't be a surprise to hear me say that I freaking love Berserk. Which is odd, because, like, I know I already talked about the ending, see? But when I was writing the script for this review, or rather before I was writing the script for this review, I thought in my head, oh man, I'm gonna rip that ending a new one. And I actually wrote a few versions where I talked about it negatively, but then I was like, you know, it doesn't seem like it when you watch it, but it really is a good fit for this show. Like, obviously, it would have worked better if they actually adapted more of the anime back then, but they didn't. Yeah, there are those newer Berserk movie adaptations, but I've only watched the first, and from what I've heard beyond that, there's nothing extremely notable about them. And I'm going to save that clip of me saying those words in case I actually do review those movies in the future and actually say that they're really good. But yes, if you haven't watched Berserk, I highly recommend that you do so. The only problem you might have is how old it looks, though really, you need to get over that because you will gate yourself out of so much good anime if you just refuse to watch it because it's old. Seriously. And so I proudly present Berserk with the rating of Certified Frosty, a rating for only the best of the best, and those shows too important to ignore. And yeah, I've sung its praises enough, so let's move on. And at the time of this video, Berserk has been licensed by Media Blasters, though sadly it seems to be out of print. You might be able to scrounge the internet and find the remastered DVD set that I got if you can, though quite honestly, if I had the money, I would keep an eye out for the original DVD release set called The Box of War. It's something a semi-anime collector like me would love to have, but I've never seen it for a price that I can actually afford. The show technically is available for streaming over on Viz's Media website, apparently, but I can't confirm that because Viz doesn't offer streaming services in Canada, so my guess is that it is US only, assuming it's streaming at all. Like, I know I keep giving Certified Frosty to a bunch of shows which you can't easily get legally anymore, but it's not my fault that these shows remain unlicensed. It's just the way the news goes. For ultimate anime recommendations, the first thing that comes to my mind is Claymore. Though really it has much more in common with the demon slaying side of Berserk that this adaptation doesn't touch on as much. Although the ending to Claymore is quite garbage, but it will remind you of Berserk, and besides, it's the general tone of the series that remains, and also the battles of Claymore are wonderful to watch. Second series is the one that I mentioned earlier, Gungrave. I wouldn't be surprised if Berserk somehow influenced Gungrave in some way, as the plots between them are heavily reminiscent of each other. Both start off with a demon-hunting main character, and then spends the rest of the show in the past, showing how that apocalypse came to be from a world that was nothing like it. It's good stuff, all told. And that's it for me. Please subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Follow me on Twitter if you feel so inclined, and hey, if you like what I do here and feel like helping out, please consider going and checking out my Patreon page, and if you feel it within your heart, also consider donating. Very special thanks to Lulika Dachi and Nikolai Gray for donating already. You guys are both amazing. And until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, stay frosty.